Sunil and I have a ton to talk about. A short week, definitely condensed. We have a game in just 2 days. Can't wait for that. But there's some things to talk about in the last game. Where have the 49ers improved? Where did they possibly show regression? What to look forward to? And John Lynch gave us a little tidbit as far as what he's thinking of doing with all this extra money that the 49ers have. We're going to talk about that plus much more next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it's Tuesday night, which means I got my guy, So Real, Sunil in the building. What's up, Sunil?
The 49ers have been 2-0 3 times now under the Shanahan era. 2019, they made it to the Super Bowl. I believe it was 2021 NFC Championship game.
Okay.
And now 2023-2024 season to be determined, sir.
Okay. All right. I like it. I have to ask, with that brown polo, which I don't know how I didn't catch this when we were backstage, but it just hit me. Is it brown? It looks brown.
It's a little magenta-ish, burgundy.
Okay. All right. Like Ron Burgundy? Okay,
Exactly.
I got it. I was going to ask if there's plaid bell bottoms to go with those, because that looks like the fit.
You know what? I don't own a pair of plaid bell bottoms, but I might have to.
You will now.
I might have to search that. That might be on my Amazon wish list to find some of those. I don't even know where I would buy plaid bell bottoms, so that's definitely an internet search.
I don't know. I'll find them for you. Remember last year I got you a little gift for like being a part of the show all year?
Yeah.
Those might be in the stocking this year. We will definitely see. All right, let's talk about these 49ers, man. Today they made a signing. They brought in Anthony Brown, who's a longtime corner from the Dallas Cowboys. Not necessarily a big name or anything like that. They were looking at multiple different corners. Anthony Brown, of the guys that they were looking at, between he and Roby, a little bit younger, definitely established in this league, still a veteran. What do you think of the Anthony Brown signing?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a depth piece that's necessary, unfortunately, because the secondary is a little beat up. You know, Ambry Thomas came out with the injury. We already know Samuel Womack they had to put on the IR. So, you know, this was, I think, one of the things going in, Jesse, we were a little bit worried about. We knew that the 49ers had at least focused on spending draft capital on bulking it up and getting younger at this position. But, you know, it's a position that gets oft injured. So, you know, unfortunately, we've seen some injuries. And Anthony Brown, I think everybody in the building feels comfortable with him. It seemed like, you know, there was some connections as far as being played against him and him having some good games against some of the coaching staff. So I think that's more what led to him being there. And, you know, hopefully, knock on wood, he doesn't need to actually play. But I guess if in the chance he does have to play, I guess they feel comfortable with him.
One thing I noticed is the 49ers have players that are versatile at corner. You look at Deebo, you look at Oliver, you look at Womack. And now you look at the Anthony Brown signing, you have guys that can play inside or outside. They're all interchangeable. And that's one thing that I noticed when I was going through Anthony Brown's stats, how often he actually lines up at nickel corner or in the slot. Pretty often. The last couple of years, it's been less and less, but throughout his career, there's been years where he's been at that nickel corner spot an awful lot. And I did ask a couple of Cowboys content creators what they thought of him. I just want a scouting report. And basically the same thing was said. One, he has trouble staying healthy the last couple of years, which, okay, whatever. Hopefully he's not playing a ton. But two, they actually prefer him at nickel corner. They felt like when he was outside, he was getting burnt a lot. That's ultimately what led the Dallas Cowboys to replace him, is he could not fit in that outside corner spot. So if he does play, the preference would be at nickel based off of what they're telling me. But they said for a depth piece, not a bad pickup by any means. And again, this isn't a big splash signing, but it is a player that is now a part of this organization. And with some of the injuries they've had in that secondary, they do need the depth, and they chose to go with a veteran who's versatile. May not be the greatest player, but if he does have to play, he is serviceable.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Samuel Womack injury is a little bit the one that they're really trying to replace, right? Because Womack could move into that nickel or play outside if they wanted to let Deebo play the nickel. And having now Ambry Thomas have an injury as well, they need somebody to play outside in the case. And obviously with Isaiah Oliver, the only, I guess, true nickel on the team, you could say, is getting it's definitely need right now. So I think they're trying to hold out as far as like trying to use some of that cap money that you were mentioning to bring somebody in, and hoping that just these depth pieces and who they have on the roster right now will be able to stay healthy enough. Knock on wood, at least, our top two corners have been able to stay healthy, which, has helped out. And Isaiah Oliver obviously stepped up in this last game, but I guess with those three corners we'll be good. But any other injuries, Jesse, now we're starting to get in, not maybe panic mode, but definitely like hold our breath a little bit.
Yeah, most definitely. Philip David Davies, hell of a name, says, what are the expectations for Thursday's game? A lot of people are looking ahead to the week 5 game. I definitely am falling into that a little bit. Looking ahead to the week 5 game, I think most of us feel like the Giants without Saquon Barkley, and we know what Arizona is at this point, not really giving them a lot of credit. I think for me, and I'll talk more about it tomorrow as I do behind enemy lines, but just off rip, I would expect that the 49ers win and win handily. Like, what I would like to see is for them to be able to rest some of these big name players down the stretch of that game and really go into this 10-game stretch before they play Arizona fully rested, fully healed, use it as kind of a mini bye week. Because remember, the 49ers have another Thursday night game later in the season. As the season goes along, they really start to alternate road game, home game, road game, home game. There's not a lot of continuity there. And unless you get the number 1 seed, chances are, I mean, you're not going to get a second bye week. So this right here is going to be important. Using it as a mini bye week and finishing the game as such would be ideal. So that's what I would be looking for off rip. Anything you're looking for?
Well, look, Arizona went out there and put a hurting on the Giants starting out, and it seemed like ownership might have gone down to the locker room and been like, "Hey guys, you know what we're trying to do this season, right? Y'all can't be beating teams like this." And then all of a sudden, the second half, a whole new team came out, right? Because that's what I felt when I was seeing what was going on. I was like, "Yo, Arizona's not supposed to be putting up points like this, and not supposed to be trying to win games like this." But they definitely, how most teams do adjustments to like fix things. Arizona's doing adjustments to be like, yo, like
their way around.
Yeah. Dobbs, we didn't bring you here to start winning.
You were chosen for a reason. Do your job, Dobbs. Do your job. My goodness. $2 Chuck, Brother Bob says, "Oh, it's Sunil, aka Shanistan. I got love for you." And then he says, "We need depth because Shanahan let Jameson and Knight go." Yeah, that one hurt. The Quantrez Knight. Jameson, that one sucked before the season, but Quantrez Knight, that one stung a little bit. He's now on the Arizona Cardinals. Speaking of them, Buda Baker is on IR, and so they needed somebody, and naturally they stole from the 49ers. So there you go.
Yeah, it's just tough because it's not that we don't have the players. They're just injured, right? Because Luther Jr. is there, he's injured. Samuel Womack's there, he's injured. And, Ambry Thomas, who should be, the 5th or 6th depth guy, he's injured too. So it's kind of, I kind of don't blame the team because they actually did what they're supposed to do. Like if you had Luther, if you had Womack there, I don't think we're worried, right? So
yeah. No, that's a good point. It's a very good point. I don't even know. How do you guys do this? Anytime I give a super chat, it's like a fixed amount. It's like $2, $5, $10, $20. You guys have a whole way around it, but there you go. You've got the highest one. Appreciate you for sure. All right, let's talk about this salary cap. It's interesting because earlier today I had a topic with Ryan and we talked about a position that we want the 49ers to potentially trade for at the trade deadline. Not necessarily a player. I think it's too early for that, but just a position. So we gave our positions and what have you. And then after the show's over, I saw that Lynch had talked about the salary cap and what their plans are with this extra money. And really, he seemed content with the team as is the way he portrayed things. And mostly they want to roll over as much money as possible next year. Now, looking at things, the 49ers are going to be roughly around 23 million over the cap as it sits now with some of their reworked deals, but you can roll money over. So just to explain it quickly, let's say the salary cap is a flat 200 million and you spend 180 million this year. That means next year, if the cap stays the same at 200 million, because you spent 20 million less than the allotted amount, you can go over the cap essentially next year by 20 million. You have $220 million to play with, where other teams would have the standard 200 million or whatever it was that they rolled over from the year prior. So the 49ers, with the projected cap, seem to be about 23 million or so over the cap next year. If they roll over this 42 million-ish, then that gives them about $18 million to play with based off of what the projections are next year. So I found it interesting that seems to be where they're headed. Not necessarily a bad decision. I do like the decision. Then he was asked about would they make a deadline deal, and he basically said, hey, we're always going to be interested, but it doesn't look like they're in a position to want to spend a ton of money for potentially a lopsided deal because they want to roll money over. What did you think about John Lynch talking about the salary cap and what they plan to do with it?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for where this team is at, right? We got to understand where the team is at. So earlier in this regime, when they didn't have the talent that they have on this team, you want them to go acquire, Emmanuel Sanders at the deadline because, you want to get to where you have enough talent to push for that Super Bowl when you feel like you have that type of roster there. Whereas, now we have enough talent to contend for a Super Bowl. I don't know if there's a missing piece that we're looking for. It's really just keeping the talent that we already have healthy. And then we have, if not the best, one of the best rosters in the league. Like I said on a show I think I did, I don't know if it was this with you or with someone else, where I don't think there's a roster in the NFL that's significantly better than the 49ers. There's going to be rosters that are similar, but we'll never have a roster where we are out talented as long as this team stays healthy. So it makes a lot of sense. They went out and they made every single one of their stars one of the highest paid at their position. That eventually that bill's going to come up. So it makes a lot of sense. And you have to give a lot of praise to the front office of the 49ers for drafting as well as they do, to be able to be in this type of position where they could still have a ton of talent without needing to go out in free agency to always fill holes. They can actually draft those positions, develop those guys so that they're in a position right now to just re-sign their own guys and do it that way, which I think extends the window, I guess, a little bit more, because now you're able to, you don't have to lose the core, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's interesting because when when we knew that Bosa was signed, immediately we heard that they reworked the deal with Armstead and Kittle. And I immediately threw out a tweet and said, I don't like this at all. Like, I don't like kicking the can down the road on guys that are 30 plus unless you're front loading the hell out of Bosa's deal. Well, come to find out, they didn't front load the heck out of his deal for this year. However, they kind of are by rolling this cap over. It's effectively the same exact thing that they're doing. They could have taken that same money and paid Bosa up front and saved it later on, or they could roll it over to next year and use it then. effectively they're doing the same thing. So I have zero issue with it. It is something that has to be done. They are staying financially responsible, which is a very, very good thing. We've seen teams like the Saints not be able to keep their cores together, maybe as long as they would have liked to, because of financial decisions and not kind of thinking things through as they could. And then we've seen teams like the Browns, although they just somehow are never a good team, but they've done a really good job with the salary cap and rolling money over the way that they have to bring in big name players and continue to add good players to that roster. And that's what the 49ers are essentially doing here. They're making sure that they can pay their players going forward, but also will have some wiggle room to go out and get a player, whether it's this trade deadline or next offseason, just to continue to make things better. So I like that they're thinking ahead. This is a very smart move by Lynch and the 49ers, and you got to love it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And we know that there's contracts coming up in the next couple of years, right? We know Ayuk next season. In a couple years, Purdy's gonna, take probably most of the cap at that point if he continues on the trajectory that he's on. So, I think the biggest thing is understanding when Lynch said they're always managing the cap 3 years in advance, right? So they take it by 3-year windows. I think that was the biggest takeaway that I took. Is it makes a lot of sense because we're always like seeing that the cap hit's about to hit in that third year type of thing. And now this next year would have been that third year of some of those bigger contracts, right? That where it escalated big time. And now they're readjusting that to make sure that they could cover that next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Tinker, I don't see a super chat from you, brother, but I appreciate you attempting. Zach says, not anymore to Gammon.
It's a competition.
Not the highest paid. But then Gammon says, Zach is a fan of Highlander, I see. So you guys are just going at it. That's fun to watch. Let's see. Somebody, where's he at? What did Mike say? Mike said, I'm the Jerome Hargrove of content creators. I'll take it. I will definitely take it. Although that means if Shannon Sharp is trying to talk about me as a content creator, he would call me Jerome Hargrove. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe not the compliment that you thought it once was, Mike, before you sent that, but I'll still take it. I will definitely take it for sure. All right.
Well, Shannon, anytime Shannon gets your name wrong, that means you're something.
Oh,
that
okay.
Means you're something,
all right.
Because
all right.
He's also Mr. LeBron James, LeBron. So it's like, so if you getting your name pronounced wrong by Shannon, that means you've made it.
All right. Well, then, according to Mike, I am the Jerome Hargrove of content creators. All right. Let's talk about the 49ers. Week 2 over week 1. In business, often you will have week over week analysis. And with the 49ers, we only have 2 weeks to go off of, but we got to give week over week analysis. So we'll start with you, and we'll start with the positive. Week over week, what looked better for the San Francisco 49ers week 2 compared to week 1, in your opinion?
I'm going to go with, even though the numbers were the same, I guess, similar, I want to go with the special teams. The special teams stepped up, I think, a little bit. I mean, Moody had that one kick where he kicked it out of bounds on a kickoff, which was obviously not ideal. But overall, the same issues that I was seeing in week 1, I wasn't seeing in week 2, right? So they were able to cover those kick returns. They were, managing the starting field position for the Rams much better than they were against the Steelers. And obviously Jake Moody, especially with that 57-yarder, man, he was getting Jesse to actually apologize. I was like, yo, look at Jake Moody finally getting that apology from Jesse on Twitter. So
you notice how I left myself an out, though. You saw that I ended it with for now. For now.
I see that, Jesse, you always trying to hedge, right? You make
sure.
you one of those I make strong takes. Yeah. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like you're one of those type of strong take makers. So I know
those takes every once in a while when I feel like it.
Exactly. This is how I feel sometimes, but so I want to give props. I think the special teams definitely look better week 2 than they did week 1.
I actually was going to go with special teams, so I'm going to have to change mine. But I do have a second one, and I agree with you. Special teams, especially in the return game, return defensive game, I would say they definitely showed out a lot better. Listen, at first glance, I thought this right here was way better than it was last week. I went back and watched things, and I don't feel as strongly about it, but it was still better regardless. The right side of the offensive line wasn't as big of a concern as it was in week 1. Now, we can chalk that up and say, all right, well, maybe they weren't playing, as stout of a defensive line. Maybe they're just getting more continuity. They looked better. And at least after the game, immediately after the game, last week, leaving the game, I'm like, that right side of the line is awful. This week, I was like, not so bad. There's improvement. So I'm going to go with that. I think the right side of the offensive line definitely did make improvements. And hopefully, just each week, they can build on that. I think talent-wise, they have the skill to be fine. It's just putting it together. You still got a young player in Burford. You've got a guy in McKivitz who hasn't played a ton regardless. He's more of a spot duty guy. So I would hope as the season goes, we see this improvement. So not perfect by any means, but definitely better than week 1, I would have to say.
Yeah, I feel you. And I mean, look, I think I'm a lot higher on McKivitz than a lot of people. I don't necessarily think he's a Pro Bowl right tackle, but I do think he's going to be serviceable. And I think the Pittsburgh game, the reason why he looked bad was more TJ Watt than his ability. I think a lot of right tackles will look that way against TJ Watt. And, it's not that he didn't play against people formidable. Aaron Donald was lined up against him a few times, and, Donald didn't have a crazy game by any stretch of the imagination. So you got to give, for as much criticism as the right side of the line got last week, I think it's good that you brought them up and gave them a little bit of praise, because I think they deserve it. And more importantly, not so much just the fact that, there wasn't as many sacks and they were actually able to get some touchdowns running to the right, which was, we don't usually see all the time. They didn't have nearly the penalties that they had in week 1, which obviously is a big deal, right? So cleaning up those penalties, I think they do deserve some praise.
Yeah, most definitely. $2 Chuck, Brother Bob says, yo, Gammon and Zach, stay out of my $2 Chuck lane, I think is what we're saying. Gammon says, how much for you two to shave your beards live? Not going to happen. You've seen me with a shaved beard. We don't want to do that again. And then $2 Chuck says, yo, Gammon and Zach, stay out. He's making sure that he's reminding you. He's really kind of being a bully is the way that I see this. I don't know how I feel about that, Brother Bob, but we'll see how the show goes. All right. So we just gave where the 49ers improved week over week. Where did they look slightly worse, or was there a downgrade in your opinion, week 2 over week 1 in your week over week analysis?
I'm gonna let you go first, because I think I naturally dim your shine, bro, because I just have the better takes. But
that's true.
You my boy. This is your channel. Let's give you some shine.
Yeah, most definitely. I would say, and it wasn't bad by any means, but last week, the 49ers in particular, in the middle of that defensive line, absolutely dominated the game, right? I think the defense as a whole, you could say, all right, well, the defense just didn't look as good. But in particular, the interior of that defensive line last week was absolutely dominant. They were getting pressure on a regular basis. And I think there's reasons for that, but they just didn't play near as well as they did the week before. I think a lot of that came down to schematics. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, just not the dominant performance from them that we saw the week before. And I think because there wasn't a lot of pressure, and then the 49ers were playing soft coverage behind that, it just kind of came down to a day where the game was maybe a lot closer than what a lot of people predicted, and a lot closer for a long time than what we were comfortable with, for sure.
Yeah, and mine's going to be on the defensive side as well. I don't think that the linebackers had as great of a game as they usually do, and specifically when it came to stopping the run. In week 1, they were able to hold the Pittsburgh Steelers to under 50 yards rushing. That wasn't the case. Kyren Williams was running all over them. And the tackling, usually the 49ers are extremely sound tacklers, Jesse. I don't know if you noticed, but especially in that first half, they were letting guys like Puka, guys like Kyren get hit and get more yards after the hit, which is not something I'm used to seeing the defense allowing. That I think was, especially in the first half, was a big issue that they were allowing the Rams to get their run off, which was a little bit disappointing because they did really struggle. Rams did with running the ball against Seattle. So something that 49ers do need to tighten up when it comes to, moving forward, because, obviously the rush is something that a lot of teams focus on. And that has been something that the 49ers we thought had fixed. But if that's going to start slipping, definitely need to fix that.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because I think there's two plays that kind of can summarize what you're talking about. Week 1, you had Fred Warner meet Najee Harris at the point of contact and absolutely obliterate him. So much so that, in fact, I had a conversation with Larry and Vish the week leading up to the game, and I just said, to me, the tone setters on this defense as far as hard hitters are Greenlaw and Hufanga. Not saying that Fred doesn't hit hard from time to time, but that's not his game. He's the coverage guy. So people were like, oh, yeah, what about this hit? Well, I could have easily responded because a play this week when Kyren Williams ended up getting a touchdown like a play later, he met Fred Warner at the point of contact in the hole, and he drove Fred Warner backwards. And so it was just one of those things where the juice from the linebackers may not have been the same week over week. And part of that might be because Greenlaw got the penalty as well. Greenlaw's he's always right on the edge of potentially getting the penalty. This week, unfortunately for him, he got it. Last week, he didn't. I love that about him, but you just never know when it's going to happen. And hopefully it doesn't screw you over potentially as far as winning a game. But that's just the way that these guys play. And so sometimes when you get that penalty, it can take that nastiness out of your game or that edge off your game a little bit. And maybe that had something to do with it as well.
Especially because that penalty was so soft. Like, it really didn't seem like that should be the penalty. Knowing Dre Greenlaw's game, if he was going to get a penalty, he would definitely get his money's worth. But I think maybe that did get into the back of his mind if they're going to call the game so soft that he has to maybe ramp it down a little bit. But, it's going to be important because even though Saquon isn't going to be there against the Giants, Jesse, they're still going to run the ball a lot because they don't throw the ball well. So they still have to be able to make sure that they stop the run, whether it be mostly it's probably going to be Daniel Jones, but whomever is in that backfield, they're going to get the ball a lot. And, the 49ers need to make sure that they're meeting these rushers on their side of the ball versus, the 49er side of the line.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Gammon says few things in life are free. Like and subscribe. I like that, Gammon. I agree.
He's a
Tinker
poet.
says, screw your $3 and $6. I'm giving you 20. Let's see if this one goes through. There you go, Tinker. That one definitely went through, brother. I appreciate you. 49ers Throwback says, what grade would you give to Kyle and Steve Wilks? This is good. I like this. Okay. We don't normally do grades on this show, but we will do it for you, 49ers Throwback, always supporting us in the community and asking the question. So Kyle and Steve Wilks, I would say, well, I'm gonna separate. I'm gonna separate them. Okay. I'm gonna go individually. So Steve Wilks, I'll go first on Steve Wilks. You go first on Kyle, and then we'll flip flop. Steve Wilks, I'm gonna give a B. The reason I'm gonna give him a B is because kind of what I talked about, where in the first half they really played soft coverage and just allowed the Rams to do whatever the hell they wanted. And actually, to start the second half, it was kind of similar. Luckily for them, the ball didn't necessarily bounce the Rams' way, and the 49ers were able to make plays. After that, the aggressiveness really amped up a level, but just too much underneath stuff given up for my liking. It was clear really after a quarter what the Rams wanted to do, and they just kept kind of doing the same thing. Just play soft coverage, not a lot of blitzing, whatever. Second half, they did ramp up the blitzing. They started to get home. They started to force the issue a little bit more, and you love to see it. So I would give him a solid B, but I would like to see maybe some of those adjustments happen a little bit quicker as he gets used to this team. What do you think about Kyle Shanahan?
Shanahan, for me, I think it's I'm gonna give him a B plus A minus, and the reason for that is he's still scoring at least 30 points with this team. I think that decision to go for it on 4th and goal at the end of the half was huge. I think his decision to roll Moody out there for the 57-yarder was a game changer. And these are things where I think some of the criticism about Shanahan is he's a little bit too conservative, not as aggressive. And those two were both aggressive moves that ended up paying off. And I think were key moments in the 49ers actually winning the game. So the reason why I'm not giving them an A or an A plus is because I don't just put the offense on him. He's the head coach. So there were moments that, like you said, some of the adjustments that needed to be made weren't made quick enough, but I'll give him a A minus.
I think that's fair. The only reason I wouldn't give him an A or an A plus is, and he talked about it after the game, Christian McCaffrey played every single snap. Like at some point you've got to get these they have a good running back room. They definitely do. Yeah. So use some of these other guys. Now, again, and I've talked about this in the moment and watching the game, I don't feel like Christian McCaffrey was overused by any means. I mean, he had, I think, 23 touches. That's not crazy. But just looking back on it and realizing that those other players who I think can help this team win didn't even get a single snap. I think that you definitely got to change that. And he acknowledged that. And shout out to Shanahan. You may not have heard it earlier, but I've been giving him a lot of credit lately, Sunil, because not only have I seen some growth in the way that he's handled Brock Purdy, but also being willing to come out and say things like, hey, normally that's on the position coach to make sure that the substitutions are going a certain way. But at some point, I, as the head coach, have to realize that he's been in there every play, and I have to make sure that these other players get a chance, and we are resting Christian McCaffrey. We need him all season long. I think Shanahan has shown a lot of growth. So maybe for this game, I'm giving him an A minus, but right now his leadership, which is something I've talked about a lot, he is trending upwards big time for me. So I wanted to give him a little bit of a shout out as well.
And in due part, giving me a little pat on the back for being ahead of the game when it comes to Shanahan.
Right. Yeah. Right. You already said you went from Shan-a-stan to Shan-a-fan, so you weren't believing it either.
Look, I'm still levels above the average average 49er fan on the level of homerism when it comes to Kyle Shanahan. I'm still one of his top fans, and he knows that. I'm sure he's watching. I always got your back, Kyle.
All right.
In fact, Kyle, I'm going all the way up just for you, my guy.
Yeah, there you go. Golly, yeah. Here, you know what? Since we're just gonna jock Kyle Shanahan. So, hold on a second. I got something for you. You're gonna need this here. Hold on. I know this doesn't make for a great show, but it'll be worth it in a second. I promise you, it'll be worth it.
Wardrobe change.
Yeah. Hold on. There we go. Kyle Shanahan, bud. We love you. We love you here at Last Second Sports. You could do no wrong. $2
You sound like me. You sound like me.
Chuck says, game was close because Brock Purdy missed the wide open TDs. Let's be real. Okay, hold on. The game definitely could have gotten out of hand had those been hit. Don't disagree with that. However, the defense gave up an awful lot as well early on in the game. They definitely clamped down, and for sure, the game could have been a bigger blowout, but I can go both ways with that. I think the 49ers could have blown them out if they had done just a little bit better on either side of the ball. So Gammon says, there we go, one upper over here. Will you be attending a game during the Christmas break time frame? Cards, Ravens, Commanders. Also, I don't think that you are an Allen hater. He always calls me a Brandon Allen hater. What is your favorite Niners jersey and game day food? Tinker, you win. Not nice. I'm not a jersey guy. I don't wear a lot of jerseys or buy a lot of jerseys. Really, mainly because it seems like if you buy a jersey, you're almost going to get screwed by that player not panning out or getting traded or whatever. The only jerseys that I own, I think, because I gave away my Montana jersey on this channel, actually, a Mitchell and Ness jersey. It was a very nice jersey that I gave away. I think I have a Jerry Rice and a Steve Young, but they're tucked away. So don't really have any of those. What about you? What's your favorite jersey? I know you rock the Fred Warner. Is that your favorite one right now? Or
That's my favorite one to wear. The favorite one I have is a signed Steve Young jersey, though, but I'm never going to wear that. That one's getting
I mean,
framed
that's
up and
cheating.
but
If we're gonna talk about signed stuff, then that
yeah,
changes the
yeah.
game.
But my favorite one to wear is that gold Fred Warner one for sure.
In game day food, I'm not a big foodie when it comes to just regular game days, but if it's a Super Bowl or a big playoff game, chili dip, man. It's something that my dad made a ton when I was a kid. Absolutely love it. It's very simple. I'm sure you've had it. It's just simply 1 can of chili to 1 block of cream cheese. You cook them together and then you use it as a dip for your chips. So good, so simple. Love it. Appreciate you, Gammon. And then Knees comes in and says, do you think there's also a bit of a shift for Shanny on getting it to the playmakers? Kyle kept the ball with Deebo and CMC almost the entire fourth quarter. Yeah, that was an observation that I saw somebody else make. Vish, actually. There we go. Shout out to Vish. I saw that he made that observation. I didn't catch that until he had said it. So good catch by him. But yeah, there was from the 10-minute mark on or something like that, only Deebo and CMC touched the ball for the rest of that game. I mean, I don't know that there's a shift. He definitely seems to have always kind of gotten the ball in his team's to the team's weapons, but I think Brandon Ayuk not being 100% also might have played into this a little bit. Ayuk was a big part of the game plan last week. Kittle, I don't know what's going on with him, but if Ayuk's not really available, I can see why they went with the hot hand down the stretch. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that it's really hard not to get to the ball to playmakers because who on the team isn't a real playmaker? You know what I mean? So I think it's just even if you got Kittle involved, it would still be to one of the playmakers. So I don't think Kyle Shanahan really it thinks about players when he's calling the game. I think he's just going where he feels like he has the best matchup based off of what the defense is giving him. And it probably just turned out that CMC and Deebo, I don't think he forces it to any player throughout the game. I think he's just going to where he feels like he has the best matchup. And obviously CMC or Deebo are good matchups to have based off of probably what the Rams were showing him throughout the game.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, let's talk about Nick Bosa, who has yet to record a sack. There's a lot of players that have at least a half a sack so far this year. He is not one of them. How do you feel about Nick Bosa's play? Do you think it's an issue? Do you think that he's just simply out of shape and it's going to be fine? When do you expect Bosa to start turning up, or do you expect him to start turning up here in the next upcoming weeks?
It's harder to get up and run when you're sleeping in silk sheets. No, I'm just kidding. I think that it answers a question for us that we had, Jesse. I was pretty confident that Bosa would be just as good without a training camp. And the answer is no. He's not as good without a training camp. Even though he doesn't play in the preseason and all that type of stuff, I think he really missed the reps that he would get and being around the team and, iron sharpening iron. We heard last offseason how much him and Trent went and how it made both of them better that offseason because they were going up against each other. he probably missed that. And I think a little bit of that is showing in his production. He even mentioned it that he was starting off a little bit slow, but he did see progress. And when you do look at the tape, even though nothing really recorded in the stat sheet, Jesse, he still had a pretty good game. He was getting a lot of pressures, and I think a lot of he was definitely speeding up that internal clock for Matthew Stafford, which I think led to some of Stafford's mistakes. So to answer your question, I expect him, maybe not this game because it's a short turnaround, but I think week 4 is going to be a huge game for him. And I think definitely against Dallas, I expect him to be showing out against Dallas because I think he's a very competitive guy. And I think he wants to make sure he has a better game than Micah Parsons. But I think week 4 will start. He'll start, really coming into form. And week 5 is going to be a huge game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Week 5, I think, is definitely the game. That gives him 4 games. It gives him a full month. That game makes sense to me as far as really getting into shape. And I do. I think that we all might have underrated Bosa or underrated the ability to play at a high level coming off the couch, essentially, which we know Bosa's not in reality coming off the couch. We know that he's in phenomenal shape, but phenomenal shape is different than football shape. And he talked about it himself. Hey, it's taken a couple weeks to kind of get used to playing again and taking the hits and just being out there and being competitive. So unfortunately, he's not playing at the level that he's used to playing at. Fortunately, the 49ers have been dominant regardless. And when he does get to that level, it's only going to mean good things for the 49ers. Maybe I'm saying Dallas just because that's the hope, knowing that they're going to need it in week 5. But I do logically think, all right, a month, at that point, 5 weeks to game day from when you signed, essentially. It's not like Bosa's starting at a point where it's like, okay, he's got to get in just good shape and then get in football shape. He's at top level shape. He just has to get in football shape. I think 5 weeks is plenty enough time to allow that. I expect that he plays very well Dallas game forward. 49ers Empire says, Jesse, you going to be at Levi's in the future for the Brock Purdy statue ceremony? Well, I'll say this. I will say the same thing for Brock Purdy that I said for Jimmy Garoppolo, which is this. If they win a Super Bowl this season, then feel free to put a statue outside of Levi Stadium of the starting quarterback. Last year, at a time before he got hurt, I said I was fine with that being Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm definitely fine with that being Brock Purdy for sure. So if they win a Super Bowl, put the trophy out there. And if they do, I will be there. No doubt about it. I'm fine with that. Gammon says, chat, what's your favorite game day food? I saw that you guys were all participating, giving some good food, by the way. I saw like short ribs and bean dips and all sorts of good stuff. So you guys definitely do a much better job than I do when it comes to game day foods. That being said, Sunil, every week, this is going to be a part of the show. It is time for the award show, and here's the intro. All right, it's award ceremony time. So what we have is a group of awards, not just an MVP, but we give it a Step It Up award, somebody that needs to step up. We give a Jekyll and Hyde award, somebody that either played well or played bad, that we don't expect to necessarily continue that trend. A most underrated player award and an MVP award. So let's start with Step It Up. For you, Sunil, who's your Step It Up award going to this week?
So just a heads up, I think your audio is cutting in and out now. I don't know if when you did that.
Is it better? Is it better? Is it
yeah,
better?
Now it's better. Now it's better.
Okay.
Now it's better.
It's because I closed the window.
Yeah.
My bad. So let me go over it again. Let me go over it again.
Sure.
So we give out 4 awards each week. A Step It Up award, that's a player that needs to step up. A Jekyll and Hyde award, that's a player that played well or didn't play well that we don't necessarily expect that trend to continue. We give a most underrated player of the week award, and we give an MVP award of the week. So we're going to start with the Step It Up award. For you, who's the player that needs to step it up, Sunil?
I'm going to go with Talana Hufanga. And the reason why I want to go with Hufanga is last season, he was such a big disruptor. It seemed like he was making 2 to 5 plays a game. And obviously that led to him having an all-pro season with the 49ers. I don't think he's playing bad. I think he's playing fine. But we expect better than fine, right? We expect him to be an all-pro safety, and I don't think he's playing at an all-pro level right now, Jesse. And you know, a lot of the chat has mentioned, we just mentioned, week 5 is coming around, and we want to see this defense be elite. And I think one of the reasons why they were as good as they were last season had a lot to do with Hufanga being as big of a disruptor and making these high energy plays that really spread throughout the defense as being kind of like a leader on the field. And I haven't really seen that from him. So I'm saying, Hufanga, you're great, man, but I expect more. I need you to step it up.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. I'm actually going to go with the same exact player that I had in this award last week. And I might do this until I actually see something from him that makes it worthwhile. Spencer Burford. Going into this season, we thought that McKivitz might be a little iffy. And if you remember, the thing that I kept saying over and over is I think this offensive line can be better, even if McKivitz is a step back from Mike McGlinchey. And the reason for that is you had 3 guys on the interior that were starting for the first time in their careers really last year. So the thought process is, well, if those 3 guys naturally get just a little bit better, even if McKivitz is a step back, you can be just as good, if not better, than the year prior. So we kind of expected that McKivitz may not be as good as McGlinchey. What I didn't expect is that Spencer Burford seems to have taken no steps forward and maybe has even regressed. I don't know, but right now he's just not playing good football. Went back and watched him. He is out of position on a regular basis. He ends up thrown to the side, put on the ground. Anytime he gets to the second level, he never gets a hand on anybody. I don't know what's going on with Burford. I am no offensive line guru. I don't know the ins and outs of a technique, but what I do know and what I can say is you don't have to be a fireman to know that the house is on fire. I don't have to be an offensive line guru to tell you that it's not looking good for Spencer Burford right now. So he needs to step it up. Absolutely. Second week in a row, he's ended up here. And I'm a little disappointed because I really think that we can see some good things from him. And the only reason I'm calling him out onto the chopping block here is because I do expect better from him. He needs to step it up for sure.
Mike McDaniels is calling you on your he said, did you see the stats for Burford? Dude balled out. If they're PFF stats, always take those with a grain of salt.
I watched every snap on the All-22. I can assuredly say he didn't ball out. That I can guarantee. Now, I will say he did have one really good rep on it was the CMC run, the touchdown run. I thought that was his best rep of the game, but I could probably show you 10 plays that you're like, that ain't it, man. That ain't it. So like I said, I'm no guru, but I can tell you that's not at all what you want to see from him. So I respect the opinion. I respect the PFF grades, but PFF's tough for me. It's like a love-hate relationship because I love the depth that they give in their stats, their overall stats, and some of the next level stats. I think they're great for that. And I definitely utilize them for that. But when it comes to their actual grades, that's one person watching and giving their opinion. The problem I have with their grades, and this is where I picked holes in it, was a couple years ago when the 49ers played the Tennessee Titans. Deebo Samuel absolutely balled out. Was so damn good in that game, left his heart on the field. Juwan Jennings had one catch for like 11 yards. PFF gave Juwan Jennings a better grade than they gave Deebo Samuel. And from that point on, I'm like, I can't trust these guys as far as a grade goes. Love the next level stats, but I do not at all trust those grades.
And especially with offensive line. So from an insider that we know that used to work for PFF,
True.
PFF, when they're doing their stats, are using the game view.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not using all 22. So especially with that, you're only able to see whatever we get to see watching the televised version of it. And you're not able to see every single person on every single play. So they're filling in a lot of gaps there, especially when it comes to the offensive line grades. So always take those with a grain of salt.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, let's go Jekyll and Hyde, a player that either played better than you expected or a player that played worse than you expected. Who is that for you this week?
I'm going to go with better. And I'm stealing the one that I'm sure was yours as well. And that is our guy, Isaiah Oliver, stepping in as the nickel, balling out, making some game-winning plays. So I'm going with Isaiah Oliver. Look, Isaiah, you were somebody who everybody thought was going to be the starting nickel, had it down because of the way you were playing in the offseason. Then when it started coming to preseason games and actually game time reps, you started to slide off of that position, and obviously, lost that starting position because of some injuries. You got that starting position back, and I think he balled out. And obviously, he got an interception. He made some really big plays tackling, and obviously that fourth down play, he went out there and stopped it as well. So to me, definitely Hyde more than Jekyll, right? Jekyll is bad, so Hyde, he was definitely Hyde, and I'm hoping he stays that way because he's somebody that's important now with the lack of depth there in the cornerback room. As long as he's healthy, we're going to need games like this out of him consistently out of that nickel position.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I really thought I had somebody special chosen when I chose him, and there was no way that you were going to choose the same player. There's only one answer. It's Isaiah freaking Oliver. Yes, it's Isaiah Oliver. He balled out. The interception, going back and watching it a second time, I didn't realize live that it was a one-handed pick. Yes, it was gifted to him, whatever, but he really had to make the grab with one hand. I love that. And then the drive before, the stop that he had on Kyren Williams, one-on-one out in the flat with him. Kyren Williams, who we talked about, got tackled earlier in the game by Fred Warner and was able to drive forward for a couple yards. Well, you would think that maybe he could have done the same to Isaiah Oliver. It was a big third down play, and no can do, sir. Isaiah Oliver pushed him out of bounds. That was a huge play. One that doesn't get as much love as the pick, but I think is every bit as important because at that time, the Rams were driving yet again. So I love that play from Isaiah Oliver. Isaiah Oliver definitely deserves the Jekyll and Hyde award for this week. All right. Give me your most underrated player. Who does that award go to this week?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Because, if it's the right answer, if you have the right answer, you're going to pick who I picked, right? Because
not true.
I picked the right guy. So
definitely not true.
Most underrated, and I'm going to go because a lot of people have been throwing shade at my guy, and he might be the right one. I finally picked the right Michigan guy to get behind it. We go with my guy, Jake Moody. Still 100% on the year.
Okay.
Showed off that big leg, kicking a 57-yarder right down the middle, Jesse. Obviously a huge momentum play for the 49er, getting points where they wouldn't have gotten points in the past because for everything great about Robbie Gould, a 57-yarder isn't something that's in his wheelhouse. That would most likely be a punt from the 49ers with Robbie Gould as the kicker. But Kyle Shanahan took Moody out there, right? He gets a third-round pick for a reason. And this was that reason, Jesse. I told you we are going to be able to see more points off of his leg than we have in the past because of that leg strength, right? And we got to see it in week 2. Like I just mentioned, we haven't seen very many 57-yard attempts under Kyle Shanahan, and that's just because Robbie Gould, that's not his range. But we're going to see a lot more of those, which shortens the amount of field that Brock Purdy needs to drive that offense, and we could still get points. So I'm going to go with Jake Moody, my Michigan man that's actually stepping up, most underrated because y'all didn't think he was worth it. Y'all must have forgot.
I gave him an award last week, so I'm going to refrain this week. But I think that that's definitely a really good answer. He deserves all the love in the world. I did give him a unsung hero vibe award earlier this morning with Ryan. So it's not like I'm not giving him flowers, but I do have a different player, and I think I can justify this player. This player, we talk about the offensive line potentially being an issue on the right side. Well, the left side is phenomenal. We know Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the game, but Aaron Banks right now has given up 0 sacks, 0 pressures, 0 nothing, not a near nada. And when you watch him, contrary to Burford, he has all the strength in the world. Very first snap, he put Aaron Donald on the ground, and it continued throughout the game. He played at an extremely high level. The stats show it. The film shows it. Everything. Aaron Banks deserves love, and offensive linemen don't get it when they deserve it. Aaron Banks, shout out to you right now. You are the most underrated player this week. You deserve all the love in the world. I'm going to go MVP first.
Do it.
Because I've given you the other 3. Let you go first on those. I think there's a couple good choices here. Maybe we won't agree this week. Last week, I think it was clear it was Brandon Ayuk. Now, you tried to go with Fred Warner, if I remember correctly. Valiant effort on your part, but we both knew it was Brandon Ayuk.
Wow.
This week, before the game even started, I made the thumbnail because I knew exactly what was going to happen. The thumbnail was Deebo Samuel laughing with Aaron Donald throwing his helmet down. That was the post-game thumbnail, and it was titled Again. And what I meant by that was it was going to be a Deebo Samuel game. Deebo did what Deebo does and absolutely dominated the Rams. You get him the ball anywhere near the line of scrimmage, and he goes to work. Had the rushing touchdown, had 101 all-purpose yards. Tone setter for sure. Deebo Samuel gets the MVP award this week for me. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I mean, Deebo did have a game, but you're wrong once again. So I'm going to say, and this is actually going to be interesting because this person you actually gave a grade to earlier. And I'm going to say that he is the MVP of the game, and he's not even a player, Jesse. I'm going with the defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks. And the reason for that
I like it.
Is this game was won in the second half, not so much because the 49ers could score the ball, because they had been scoring the ball all throughout the first half as well. It was because the 49ers made the necessary adjustments in the second half that pretty much shut down everything that the Rams were doing and in the first half, and ultimately held them to 6 points in the second half. Really 3 points, because that last field goal was just
such a cheap 3 points.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, I think this is something that we're going to have to get used to, Jesse, because the big change from this defensive coordinator from other defensive coordinators is he's calling plays in the booth. He's not calling plays on the field. So I think some of those adjustments where he really needs to talk to the team and get them into different positions and all that kind of stuff probably happens more in halftime than it does. And I don't know. I'm not sure if it is, but it seems like at halftime they made the necessary adjustments. And maybe that's going to be a trend moving forward, that it's not going to be within a half kind of adjustments, just because the plays that he's calling from the booth instead of down there at the field where he could just grab the team and say, hey, this is what we need to change. I don't know. I've never been a coach, and I don't know the X's and O's that well, but I still want to give a lot of credit to Wilks. One of the things that we saw, Saleh got better at, right? Initially, he wasn't great at in-game adjustments, and then he started getting really good at it. D'Amico seemed to be, ahead of the curve when it came to in-game adjustments. This was the first time we got to see what Wilks is capable of. And, he showed out. And I think the second half, what they were able to do is once again going to age better than what I think a lot of people think the quality of the Rams, because I think the Rams are a better team than a lot of people expected them to be. I think a lot of teams are going to have a hard time shutting down the Rams offense, but Wilkes was able to do that in the second half with the adjustments that he made.
Yeah, and he's going with a Bosa that's we just talked about a little bit ago is clearly not 100% himself yet. So that's got to be taken into effect as well. But you know how I know that even you don't believe that that was the right answer, Sunil?
What?
You talked way too long. Way too long. You tried to talk yourself into it. You talked yourself into it. You really believed it, but you know it's not the right answer. It's Deebo Samuel or CMC. Those were your options, and you messed it up, man. You had one job, and you screwed
Jesse,
it up.
I have to get us to an hour, bro. I got us right to the dot, and then you killed it with that last 15-second rant.
Just
look, man. My back is hurting from carrying the show the way that I have to. We have certain marks we have to hit, guys. In pre-production, our guys tell us all, hey, we have to get this show, make sure all the content is out by the hour. I did what we had to do. Jesse obviously ruins it. Sorry, production team. Sorry, executive producer. It's not me, it's him.
Yeah, right. We are the executive producers and the production team. So I don't ever remember that being. I'm gonna have to flip through my notes, but I don't remember seeing that one in the meeting backstage.
Yo, man.
Gray Fox says, I think Akello is still laying on the turf. He got tossed and pancaked by what it seems every offensive player.
Yo, that moment with him and CMC, the camera just like zoomed in on CMC's mouth, so you could you could see exactly what he was saying. That was so epic, man. CMC is a competitor, man. That's what I love to see from him. I think that's the biggest thing that I didn't know about him coming from Carolina is that dude is fiery and he loves talking shit.
Yeah, he definitely. I loved the post game. Like, what were you saying? He's like, oh, we were just exchanging pleasantries and saying nice. How you doing? How's the family? So good. Gammon says, may I receive an award for the highest super chat paid in the form of an old school Napoleon Dynamite and Carlton Banks dance? Oh, I would. But interestingly enough, I actually erased those when I put like the award show thing on. Like a week ago, I erased those. I definitely shouldn't have. Those were a lot of fun, but eventually they had to be retired, Gammon, because you can't do it after every super chat the way that we were early on. And I guess that's a good problem to have. But if you weren't here in the beginning of the show's inception, then you won't understand what Gammon's talking about. But Gammon is a ride or die, so I appreciate you. Anthony Rodriguez says $5. I'm sure he had something else to say. $2 Chuck says, Sunil, get off your phone, bro. I'm here for your shanty love.
My shanty love is always on point, man. It doesn't matter where my focus is. Shanty love will come through.
He says, okay, Dr. Jekyll was good. Hyde was the bad alter ego. Is that what
true?
it was? I don't know.
I actually never read the book.
All I know is what Jekyll and Hyde means, and I don't know who's good or bad. I just know what it means. So $2 Chuck says, I like Moody, but no more kickoffs out of bounds. Yeah, that was
interesting to say the least.
Yeah. I'll leave it at interesting for sure. And then Gammon says, can't wait for $2 Chuck to go Super Saiyan and turn into $5 Nuck if you buck. That's a good one. Good reference. Like good song. I would play it, but I'd get a copyright claim. So I can't do that, Gammon. I appreciate it. That being said, we are signing off. Tomorrow night, I will be back. 49ers After Dark with Grant, and then, of course, Behind Enemy Lines with a giant content creator here at 10:15 p.m. in the East, 7:15 p.m. in the West. Make sure you are tapped in. Show your 49er love in the chat. We will be on live with a giant channel, so they will be in the chat as well. Make sure that you represent. Cannot wait for that. And then we've got a Thursday game. It's a short week, y'all. Appreciate the love. And peace.